Welcome to Do.Different.Better show with Elaine Rasmussen, where we talk about wealth wisdom and money moves, making finance simple for everyday people. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, founder and CEO of Social Impact Now, Connect Up Institute, and general partner of the Integrated Capital Fund. Thank you for joining me today. In our last episode, we talked about getting ready for capital, such as a loan or investment into your business, and that process, which is called due diligence. Today, I'm going to turn my attention to the digital world of finance to tackle a topic that's becoming increasingly crucial in our connected lives, and that is cyber financial fraud. I'll talk about what it is, I'll share my own personal experiences, how it happens, and what you can do to protect yourself not only before it happens, but after it happens to you. Whether you're a tech newbie or a seasoned netizen, today's episode will amp up your defenses and refine your cyber risk game. You're not going to want to miss this episode. Trust me, you'll be glad you were here. So, whether you're managing personal finances or you're a small business, the threat of cyber financial fraud is bigger and badder than ever. I just watched this movie called The Beekeeper. If you haven't seen it, please do. It's amazing. It's with Felicia Rashad and Jason Statham, but it's all talking about cyber hacking, particularly with individuals and how it is big business. It's no longer just a matter of receiving the occasional scam email. Now it's about dealing with intricate schemes that could shake your financial security in an instant. Cyber fraud, in simple terms, involves very deceptive practices that exploit the internet, the emails, software, your personal vulnerabilities around money and around the internet and your insecurities, and they use it to steal money from individuals and businesses. The digital age has brought convenience, but also a wave of very sophisticated crimes and scams aimed at siphoning your hard-earned money. So let's break down a few types of cyber fraud that are really prevalent today. First up, we have phishing. And we might know the phishing, and this kind of goes back to even the 80s, right? I remember when phishing first came out in the 80s, and people were like, what's phishing? And why do we call it phishing? But it really is kind of like phishing, Fishing, but it's spelled Phising. But it's really about baiting and hooking a person and bringing them in, right? So this is when you receive an email that pretends to be from a legitimate source like your bank or a well-known company like Target. I think last week I got 3 from PayPal that weren't really from PayPal, but it is actually a scammer trying to steal your personal information to get into your banking accounts or other financial accounts. Next is malware. This involves software being installed on your device without your knowledge. That can come through what's called a virus, meaning it can travel on an email. So think about an elephant, that could be an email, and you think about a tick or a fly that's on the back of the elephant. That little tick or fly is the virus that travels with the email that gets into your system and starts to learn everything about who you are, what you're doing, your passwords, etc. The software can log into your keystrokes to pull down your passwords. It can access files and more. All of this with the purpose of draining your bank accounts and hijacking your digital identity. Another devious trick is business email compromise. Here is a criminal hack into that impersonates a corporate email to defraud a company, its employees, or partners. This happened to a CFO friend of mine literally this week, and I'll talk more about that later. Often cybercrime involves fake invoices or an urgent wire transfer request. This bill needs to be paid right away. Or, hey, these batches of payments that are going to your vendors is stuck, and we need your information to be able to make sure that your vendors get paid. And let's not forget the most recent and most sophisticated and most prevalent part of cyber financial fraud, and that is social engineering. You may not have heard that word, but you're going to start to hear more about those 2 words, social engineering. This is a newer term for a range of tactics that exploit human psychology rather than technical hacking methods. Scammers might call or text you pretending to be someone that you trust to trick you into giving up sensitive information or money. This happened in my office this week, and I'll share that story with you. So, first, let's get into three different stories of three different crimes that have literally happened in the last 6 to 12 months. So, as I mentioned before, I was talking to a chief financial officer friend of mine, and he was sharing with me how he received a telephone call through the switchboard of the company that was directed to his main line that was telling him, that was saying that this was somebody, a real person at the real bank that their company banks in, that they use for their banking. However, the person's title that the person used, the fake person, used a real name, but used a different title. And it just so happened that my CFO friend was thinking, wait a minute, that's not their title. I don't understand why this. Did they person have a new title? Did they get a job change? And the, the what ended up happening was a request, a digital request to send out over $300,000 to pay for a batch of invoices. It all seemed very legit. It had all the bells and whistles of something legitimate that was happening. The other story that I'll share with you is what happened in my business literally earlier this week. We use Google products. And so one of my staff, who happens to be a newer staff member, received a chat message that sounded like it was coming from me. And it made reference to other employees in the organization, but the request was that this person go and buy gift cards, and that to take pictures of the gift cards and send them digitally to me, but it wasn't really me, right? What really made it suspicious, this was as this person was getting ready for work, and this person was actually going to go and buy these gift cards. They were a new employee. They didn't know if this was an odd request or not. It actually was. I would never ask my employees to go buy gift cards, particularly not with their own money. When the person came into work, they decided they were going to go and get the gift cards later. So they came into the office. I had come into the office, and while I was sitting there in the office, this person was receiving messages from me. And so that's when the person said, "Are you sending me chat messages?" And I said, "No, I'm not sending you chat messages." And so this is another instance of just how prevalent and how easy these things can happen. And then finally, I'll share this last story, which is also very personal to me. My mother last year got scammed out of $1,800. Somebody claiming that this person had been vying to have a relationship with my mom. And this is another thing that happens, particularly with vulnerable people as they get older. And my mom was, "Oh, I want you to meet this person. They're coming into town. I've been talking to this person for a really long time. We're pursuing a relationship." And at this point, my mom had already sent $1,800 in cryptocurrency. My mom knows nothing about cryptocurrency, but this person had created this whole story about, "Hey, you know what? This is just temporary. I'm going to give it back to you." And my mom was even telling me about how this person was like, wanted to reimburse me for my trip, coming to see my mom. My mom lives in another state, but wanted to reimburse me, but wanted to meet me. And and it was so frustrating and so heartbreaking, because I had to break the news to my mom that this was all a scam. This person wasn't real. And now we're now trying to get $1,800 back of cryptocurrency, which I had to tell my mom is far from likely ever to be retrieved again. So I share all these stories with you, one, to know that it can happen to anyone. It can happen to big organizations, wealthy people, poor people, older people, young people, college educated people, business owners. These people are vultures, and they prey. So these stories are to illustrate the importance of staying vigilant in your digital interactions. But let's talk about, how do these scams actually happen? Well, let's get into that a little bit. Scammers use a variety of tactics to ensure that to ensnare their victims. So I mentioned phishing emails, for example, are crafted to create a sense of urgency or fear. So listen to your body. If you're having a visceral reaction of like somebody sent you something that made you scared, that's maybe your first clue to check it out. And we'll talk more about that. They might tell you that your account's going to be closed. They might say you're going to lose all the data on your computer, or you'll face a fine if you don't act quickly. And you don't want that to happen. Or worse, they'll leverage your relationships. They'll talk about, hey, you don't want this to happen to your children. You don't want your children to find out, or you don't want your business partners to find out, right? They're preying on our fears of insecurity, right? This panic leads to us clicking on malicious links that need proper scrutiny, right? Or just to be verified. I've received messages, I talked about this earlier, that look like they came from the local or federal government. I've received some from the IRS. And what the IRS will tell you is, we will never email you. If you call the IRS office, your local office, or the office in DC, they will tell you all of our communication is by USPS mail, which doesn't mean you shouldn't be diligent, because like I said, the scammers are getting really good. They will send you something that looks very official and it's not. Everything looks official, and yes, it's a drag, but you have to call and find out and see if it's legitimate. I realize that might be long holding times. So maybe if you're on a long commute, that's an ideal time to make that phone call. If you know that you're calling a government agency or some other organization where you know you might have to be on hold for a little while before you actually reach a person, but it's well worth it. If you think about the 20 or 30 minutes you spend on that call versus the hours you may have to spend in retrieving whatever information's been compromised, it's a small price to pay. But I digress. With fake invoices, they often look like real ones. And this is another way that you might see a scamming opportunity. It might come from a vendor that you already work with. Scammers might even hack into real email threads that you have been communicating with one of your vendors or suppliers, and then make a fraudulent request and make it look like it's legitimate. One of the things that I like to do, one of my hacks, is I always look at the email address. The email address has a lot of information in it. So whenever I get an email that I think may be fraudulent, when you look at the email address, if it has at Gmail, if it has at Yahoo, or if it has the name of the company in the email, but the name of the company isn't after the at symbol, that's probably a questionable email, and you want to do a little bit more due diligence on how legitimate that email is. When it comes to weak security, something as simple as an easy to guess password can give scammers the keys to your financial kingdom. Using public Wi-Fi without a secure connection can also leave you exposed to these lurking people who can capture your data. And there are things like virtual personal networks. There are other ways that you can go onto public Wi-Fi, but still keep yourself safe and secure from people who are also on public Wi-Fi looking for vulnerable ways to enter in the computers or devices that are around them. So to safeguard yourself, it's always smart to double check through another channel. Give your bank an actual phone call. And I know people don't want to make phone calls anymore, but call them. There are people who will pick up the phone. Use the number from the official website of the financial institution, not from the phone number that's on the email. You might see an 800 number, and it used to be the days where an 800 number was a clue that it was legitimate. That no longer is the case, right? For stronger security, use unique passwords for each site, and think about using a password manager to keep them protected. And we'll talk a little bit more about password managers in a minute. Remember, knowledge is your best defense. By understanding these threats and how they work, you can protect yourself, your loved ones, and your business against them, and help others do the same. You're listening to Do Different Better with your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Stay with us. Coming up, we'll talk about proactive and retroactive safeguards to safeguard your finances against cyber criminals. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Now that we understand what cyber financial fraud is and how it happens, it's time to get you the knowledge and tools to prevent these digital predators from affecting your life and your business. In this segment, we're diving into proactive measures that you can use to safeguard your finances, whether you're an individual or you're running a small business. First up, let's talk about personal cybersecurity. One of the simplest yet most effective defenses against cyber threats is your password strength. Your passwords, again, are the keys to your digital financial kingdom. Using weak, easy to guess passwords like your birthday, your anniversary, your children's birthday, while yes, I understand it's like Elaine, it's a lot easier to remember that than a 12-digit number. But I want you to think about this, you having an unsafe password or easy to guess password is like leaving your front door unlocked. And I don't think you'd want to do that, right? The first step is upgrading your cybersecurity to ensure that all your passwords are strong and unique. A strong password is typically about 12 characters long and it includes numbers, symbols, upper and lowercase letters. But remembering a different strong password for every account can be daunting. I realize that. So that's where password managers come in. And there are a lot of tools like on your browser, if you're using Chrome or if you're using Safari, there are password managers that are built in. But there are other tools that can help you generate more complex passwords securely and easily. You only need to remember one master password to access all those passwords. When I worked at the State Department, I can't tell you how many stories I heard about our diplomatic security raiding offices of officials to see if their passwords were written down in their office. I heard one story where someone had put their master password on the inside of the toilet tank. They were still chastised and reprimanded for that. You're not supposed to have any of your passwords written down and any place. You're supposed to memorize your master password, and then that becomes the gate key to all other passwords that you need access to. But let's get back to business. Let's now talk about two-factor authentication. You might sometimes see it displayed as 2FA. Yes, it can be annoying, particularly in an organization, but it is an extra added layer of security that requires not only your password, but also something that only you would have access to, like your phone. Even if someone steals your password, they get access to your password, they won't be able to access your account without this second factor. So the way that it works is if you many sites are now requiring that you have some kind of two-factor authentication. And how it works is you log in with your password, whether you're using a password manager or you've memorized the password, and it sends a message to your phone. Usually a text message, sometimes a phone call. I think QuickBooks you can have an option of receiving a phone call or you can get a text. I think my bank gives me an option. I can receive a secure message through a phone call or through my phone. And it can be a landline or a cell phone number, but they'll call you and they'll give you usually a 6 to 8 digit code that you then type in on the web screen that will then let them know that one, you are the real person that is accessing this information or accessing this platform. Another thing that you can do is keep your software up to date. And I realize that's a lot of software, but there's lots, our computers and our laptops now are really good. If you turn on the setting that says keep updates, automatically update, or ask me, notify me whenever there's an update. That way you'll know for all the platforms that you use or all of the software that you're using, that you're always up to date on what is the latest and greatest. That's a really great way to do that. So whether it's your operating system, apps, your security software, updates often include patches for security vulnerabilities that fraudulent people are working to exploit. Make it a habit to update your software as soon as these updates are available. Another thing you can do is educate yourself on spotting phishing attempts. It's so important. Be wary of emails or messages that demand immediate action, or that they ask for your personal information, or they contain suspicious links. Always check the sender's credibility before interacting. Like I said, remember, go into when you get an email, sometimes when in my Google products, the email is truncated, so I can't see it. So I actually have to go into the little top where it says to, I have to click on the little down triangle to actually see the full email. And I'm almost every single time you can see either it's at best, it looks suspicious. At worst, you can tell, like, this isn't a real email address. When it says, Wells Fargo at Gmail, that's not a real address. Wells Fargo would never have a Gmail address, right? So that is not something that you want to open, right? You don't want to open the email. And the thing about it is often you can find out the two without opening the email. So especially on your phone, you can open the to part and see I'm sorry, the from part, who it's from. And also check the to, because sometimes your email address isn't correctly written. So that's another clue that it may not be legitimate. But if you look at the from, who it's from, and sometimes you can see who it's from without actually opening the email. Because remember, when my elephant analogy, there could be a virus that's traveling with that email and you don't even know it, right? So be aware of that. But once again, educating yourself on spotting phishing attempts. Do not open suspicious links. If you know the person, if you think you know the person who sent it, once again, reach out to them. Say, hey, did you send me an email? This happened to me the other day. I received an email. Who did I receive an email from? I received an email from my business bank, actually a phone call, and they were persistent with calling me. And so I was afraid to call the number back. And so followed my own advice. I called the bank directly, got in touch with their fraud department, and it just so happened they actually were trying to reach me. The fraud department was actually trying to reach me, and they had said, we've received this feedback before that it seemed like it was suspicious, but I was just glad I checked it out. It took me literally a minute or two to be able to get a hold of a real person to find out that, one, it was actually legitimate. But now I know for future, when I get that call or I get that phone number, that it's actually legitimate. But these are great steps that for your first line of defense that can actually significantly reduce you becoming a victim of cyber fraud. But now let's shift our focus to small businesses, because they are also, like older people, single people. Small businesses are right up there with ideal candidates to be ripped off. The stakes are even higher with a small business, as one single breach can compromise your customers' trust, your financial stability of your business. You may have heard some of the larger companies like Target and Best Buy and PayPal who've been infiltrated, or their data has been ransomed, right? So once again, it happens to big companies and it can happen to small companies. Big companies have insurance and IT departments that can help them get back on track, but you as a smaller business may not have that resilience. So we want to make sure you're protected. So, for any business, big or small, ensuring a secure IT infrastructure is non negotiable. This begins with having the right technology and expertise in place. I get it. You may not be tech savvy. I'm not tech savvy, but consider hiring a cybersecurity expert. Sometimes this might even be a service that's available through your insurance, your business insurance. So find out if there are any value add or trainings or things like that that your insurance company can provide you in protecting your business. But these cybersecurity experts can help you set up firewalls, use encryption for your data, ensure your networks are secure from all kinds of different intruders, right? um, Another thing, I've done this, get cyber insurance for your business. It's an add on top of your general liability insurance. But once again, you never know when these threats are going to happen, and you never going to know what the implications are. And I would hate for any of your businesses to close as a result of an incident that could have been prevented by spending maybe $100 a year on getting cyber insurance. Another thing that I don't think we often talk about is financial controls, and they are just as important. Implementing strict controls and segregating duties ensures that no single person has control over all of your financial transactions. I really talk about this not only with small businesses, but with small nonprofits. For a long time, I worked at a nonprofit, and we only had 4 employees. That's not a big staff, right? But in order to ensure, to this advice that I'm giving you, that there were some financial controls, one person opened up the mail, right? So in our mail, we would often receive checks from donors or from funders. And so one person was responsible for opening the mail and seeing the actual check. That person would give it to another person to create a deposit slip. That person would give it to another person to actually deposit the checks. So even that's three people, and even in a small organization, that gives you some financial control to know that not one person gets to control the entire process, which then mitigates fraud because it requires a higher level of collusion or people conspiring if they want to defraud the organization. Now, you might be saying, Elaine, I'm a solopreneur, I'm a one person shop. Understandable. But as your business grows, because I know your business will grow because you listen to the show, then this is when you're going to want to see how and where you might be able to delegate tasks. And maybe it's another employee who double checks what you do, you double check what they do. But as the company grows, you can start to dole out these responsibilities, right? Um, so, um, but what having these financial controls in your organization prevents fraud from taking place, and it also makes it hard for cyber criminals to manipulate any point of the financial process. So let's say some organizations might say any check over $2,000 needs to be signed by two people, even though the second person may not be a owner of the company or maybe have a senior leadership role. It's just that whole idea of if you have two people looking at something, it dramatically decreases the opportunity for fraud. So if it says, "Hey, any purchases over $2,000 or $5,000, two people have to sign off on it," or and purchases over $150,000 or $10,000, the owner has to sign off on, or the board chair has to sign off of. These are all ways that you can mitigate financial fraud happening in the organization. Finally, I'm going to talk about fostering a culture of security within your organization. This actually goes a long way. Now, I am not recommending or suggesting that you create a fear-mongering campaign around these things. But when security becomes a natural part of the business ethos, it's a part of the culture, employees taking ownership of their roles and protecting the business. Protecting the business also protects them and their employment. If you go out of business, they don't have a job. So making that correlation, I'll tell you another thing. We happen to have a front door that you are able to latch the front door with an Allen wrench key. And I happened to be traveling, and I came in on the following Monday, and it turned out our front door had been unlocked the whole entire weekend, right? I had a little panic attack that because we're our office is on a busy street. It's on a main corridor street, right off of the light rail. And so it was like, huh, oh, okay, our doors were unlocked. My front door was unlocked the entire weekend. Nothing happened, which I'm very, very grateful for. But this whole idea of I had to send out a reminder to staff of like, here's the checklist if you are the last person in the building, right? Check the front door. Even if you're going out the back door, we have a front door and a back door. Even if you're going out the back door, come, don't, be sure to check the lock. But fostering, protecting, encouraging them to speak up about suspicious activity, making it a safe place and not punitive, but practicing safe online habits both in and out of the workplace and getting them to really think about these things and raising a flag. But there are lots of great resources online for IT security materials that you can adopt for your business. Remember, no business is immune from cyber threats. And finally, I want to share with you the goal is to not just to protect your business, but also build resilience against potential attacks. By taking some of these steps, you can empower your business to thrive in a digital age that is dominated by cyber threats. Up next, we're going to look at what do you do if the worst happens and you find yourself a victim of cyber financial fraud. Stay with us. You're listening to Do Different Better with your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and we've been talking about tools to protect you and your business from cyber threats. Up next, we'll look into what happens if the worst happens and find if you find yourself a victim of cyber financial fraud.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Do Different Better. We just talked about if you're just joining us, protecting ourselves from cyber financial fraud. But what happens if you fall victim despite all of your best efforts? Let's dive into some crucial steps to take to take action immediately after detecting fraud and explore how you can recover from it. So, discovering that you have been a victim of financial fraud can be a shock to the system. You may feel embarrassed or ashamed, and I want you to stop that. Do not think that. While this is completely understandable, you must know that these cyber criminals are experts at what they do. They come for you like a lion stalking their prey. They are relentless. So, your first actions in the aftermath are super critical to protect yourself and minimize the damage. So, when it happens to you, and it's far more likely that it will than it won't, act fast, okay? But first things first, contact your bank or the credit card company immediately. Whatever the financial institution that is related to the crime, contact them first off. The quicker you report the fraud, the faster they can freeze your accounts to prevent further unauthorized transactions. But also, they're far more likely to be able to trace what's happening in the moment. Most banks have a 24-hour hotline specifically for fraud claims. Remember, time is of the essence. Right now, there's lots of credit cards where I love the Discover card. They have a feature with if you have their app, if you even left your card maybe at a restaurant or something like that, you can put a hold on the card from your phone. I love that. That's remarkable. And you may find your card, or maybe you had a wild night out and you don't know what happened to your card. Maybe it's still sitting at the bar. You can put a hold on the account until the next day. Go back to the establishment and say, "Hey, did I leave my credit card here?" If you didn't, you can then request a new card from the company. But if you did and you get your card back, you don't have to go through the hassle of getting a new number. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of information stored in my pre-purchasing with Amazon. And so to have to go and fix all those things, it's a little bit of a hassle. But once again, safety first, safety first, safety first. Next, it's important to report the fraud to the local and perhaps federal law enforcement authorities. This could mean your local police, and it definitely includes filing a police report with the relevant crime unit. So it might be a cyber crimes unit, it might be just a traditional officer, but it could be something like the Internet Crime Complaint Center. These are all different reporting elements. Your particular town or district or county may have a specific division, or if you don't have a police department, maybe it's your county sheriff department, but they typically will have a division that specifically takes fraud complaints. Reporting to the authorities quickly helps them to track down the perpetrators and possibly prevent future crimes. I always respond to suspicious email. What I do is I copy my local FBI office on the email so they can track the IP address and other metadata traffic that is going with the email. So that's another way that it's a simple thing. Anytime I think I get something suspicious or I know that it's suspicious, I just reply to them. And I copy, I might blind copy or I might CC my local FBI office. That way it's on their radar and I don't have to make a phone call. I'm hoping I don't have to make a phone call. I've never really checked that out. I probably should. Now let's talk about what comes after the immediate response in recovering from cyber financial fraud. Recovery can be a challenging road and it's exhausting, but many have walked it successfully. Once One of the very first steps in the recovery process is to explore legal avenues. This might involve working with a lawyer to understand your rights and potential actions to recoup your losses or sue for damages if applicable. But your insurance company may also be able to help you here. They can represent you because especially if you decide that you're going to make an insurance claim, they have folks that are specifically tasked with working on these kinds of episodes. Restoring your personal and business reputation and credit score is the next thing you want to do. So, ensuring that you report the fraud to the credit agencies and dispute any fraudulent transactions or accounts open in your name. This is also crucial to making sure that your financial and credit history is accurate, especially if you're a business and you have to operate on business credit. You want to make sure that you've done that. If you're a business, you may also want to report to Dun and Bradstreet. If you are a government contractor, whoever you are doing business with, you want to let them know as well. And they may have a reporting agent that all of those kinds of reports go to. So make sure that you're doing that. But in all of this doom and gloom, I do want to share some success stories. There was one business owner who, after being hit by a phishing scam, worked with forensic specialists to secure their systems, recovered almost all the money that they lost, and through swift legal action, was able to make a full recovery, if not almost 95% recovery. And now this person mentors others in cybersecurity practices. Another is an individual who I know who was quick to spot unauthorized transactions, reported them immediately, and through credit monitoring, managed to restore their credit score within a year, all while helping to catch the fraudster through diligent documentation and cooperation with law enforcement. Recovery is just not about getting back what was lost, but it's also learning and evolving to prevent future incidents. It's about turning a bad experience and turning it into a good experience for growth and education. And share your story. I think there's so much shame around this. I think if we normalize that there are people who are actively get paid to do this, we should be just as diligent in sharing when these things happen and what was our recovery story, and making sure that people know how these different ways that people can scam you so that it doesn't happen to somebody else. In today's digital world, having the right tools can make all the difference. Ask your bank or your accountant to share with you their recommendations for top rated security software and tools that are must haves for individuals and businesses, whether it's antivirus software to advanced firewalls, secure password managers. Choosing the right tools can shield you from cyber threats. When selecting these tools, consider factors like the level of security you might need, the size of the business that you're in, and specific features that cater to your industry or personal use habits. Education is really the first line of defense, and guess what? It's free. I encourage you to check out courses and workshops focused on cybersecurities. Websites like LinkedIn, Cyber, or Coursera often have specific trainings that can elevate your understanding and preparedness. You can also go to YouTube, right? And just put in the search bar latest cyber hacking financial scams for small businesses and see what comes up, right? Once again, this isn't for you to now have a new thing to be obsessed with, but it is for you to have some hyper awareness around, right? Just like potholes, right? Think of your cybersecurity when you're driving down the road like a pothole. How can you avoid them? Because when you hit a pothole, that could mean a new tire, could be a new chassis, could be a new axle, and you don't want that to happen, right? So being vigilant, being present is the name of the game here. The goal is not to be an expert, but to prevent yourself from being as vulnerable as a gazelle in the middle of the Serengeti. Don't forget to join local or online support groups and forums where you can receive ongoing advice and community support. Whether you've been a victim or you're in a small business, this is great for that because you don't have to be the expert. You don't have to be hyper diligent. People are going to share their stories and be like, "Oh, that's one more thing I can implement in my business." These platforms and communities are also often free and can be very invaluable in staying updated on new threats and sharing experiences. So, with all that, I hope that you've been able to take away from this, once again, not a level of fear, but hopefully a level of empowerment, hopefully a level of confidence that you have access to the things that you need to make sure that you are safe and secure, your business is safe and secure. And I really, really hope this episode goes viral. I'm telling you, people are not playing games out here in these streets. There was just an episode of John Oliver's show where he talked about there is human trafficking that is behind this industry of cyber fraud. People are being trafficked into places and spaces on the promises of work. These are developing countries and third world countries. People are looking to build a better life for themselves, are then trafficked into these companies that have grueling hours that they are mandated to scam you, right? So I'm not saying that everybody is a good guy, but some of the people who are perpetrating these scams are in a not as good of a they're in a no better situation than you are. They are being beaten, they are being tortured for not hitting certain goals of how much money they have scammed from people. That's not all of them, but I want you to just be aware that there is a whole business behind these financial crimes. There are people, they're not in basements, they are in whole buildings, office buildings that look legitimate, that where they are perpetrating these activities, right? So we just want you to be, I want you to be, my heart of hearts, I want you, your families, your businesses to be financially safe, because this is a long, hard road if you become a victim. And if we can prevent that, that's what we want to have happen. So that wraps up today's episode on cyber financial fraud. Remember, the key to combating this threat is a combination of diligence, vigilance, knowledge, and employing the right tools. If you're like Elaine, you've talked about a lot of things. Where do I even begin? This isn't like, I want you to think about this as losing weight. I want you to think about this as preparing for a marathon. It is not a destination, it's a journey. So just start thinking about, pick one thing a month that you're going to work on, either personally or with your staff in your business. Pick one thing a month. You can't do all the things, particularly for small businesses, with all the other things you have to do, right? You only have so much time in the day and you have only so much time in the month. And make it fun. Turn it around in your employees. Ask your employees in your team meeting, in your stand up, for people to share something that's happened to them where they have either been a victim of cyber fraud or they received something suspicious, and to talk about it with the group. That's one thing you can do. And what, once again, start to make a plan of like, what's one thing I can do every month? I'm going to make a call to my insurance company and find out what kind of protection I have. If I don't have protection, I'm going to find out how much the protection is. And then the next month, I'm actually going to make that purchase, right? So start to chip at it. What's the best way to eat an elephant? Is anybody eating elephants? I don't know. But the saying goes, the way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. Use that same approach. You can't get it all done all at once. So chip away at it. And that's what we mean by being vigilant, right? So take one task, one thing, one action that you're going to take every 30 days. And pretty soon you're going to be on a track of like, you're going to be like, it's going to be a regular thing for you. It's going to be a part of your mindset. It's going to be a part of your organizational culture, which is just going to make you, your family, your business safe. So join me in the next episode of Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Next time, I'll be talking about identifying your conscious and unconscious tapes around money. We're going to talk about money and values, and I've got some pretty exciting guests that are going to be coming up in future episodes. So I can't wait for you to hear their money story. I'm also going to provide you with some practical tips on how to align your values with your money, but I can't wait to see you next week, and I'll show you how to do different better. Let me know what you think of the show. We love comments. So tell us how the show helped you. If there's a money or finance question that you have, or there's somebody you want me to interview, or hit me up on Instagram or LinkedIn. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and follow us on our socials. I'll see you next time.